Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio, no pictures live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast as you're driving along in your car, your truck, or on public transport. In this essay, I'd like to talk about, excuse me, I'd like to talk about the online coverage of this current trend, I guess, for the globalist controlled media to talk about these online trolls, all these evil online people, and the social media is bad, and only the controlled globalist narrative is what we're allowed to hear or see. Now, this is the same in any sort of totalitarian type regime where only the government narrative is allowed to be seen or heard, and there's brutal crackdowns on anyone that steps outside of that. So say in the Soviet Union or China or any of these sort of places or communist regimes, Eastern Europe during the Iron Curtain years, Pol Pot's Cambodia and so on, it was the death penalty to produce it doesn't matter whether it's accurate or not. In fact, the more accurate it is, the more likely it is you'd be taken out the back and shot. But to be producing any news or opinion, whether it be verbally, particularly in print or on say a radio or something like that, that was considered to be treasonous. I guess you're an enemy of the people. You're a counter-revolutionary. There's not much that's more evil than stepping outside the bounds of the controlled narrative. And we're seeing this in the globalist controlled West today, that if you step outside the bounds of the globalist narrative, then you are evil. So now they use various launching pads to sort of try and shame the people online. So say, for example, that recent Australian lady who was the break dancer or pretend or an alleged break dancer in the Olympic Games, she copped universal, worldwide, mocking and jeering and just incredulity that something what she was doing could even make it to the Olympic Games or even make it into the local dance competition, let alone the Olympic Games, and could pass for or would be seen by her and her supporters to pass for anything resembling a break dance. Now, I've seen better break dancing by 10-year-old kids in little dance halls in the local area. Significantly better than her, and yet she was there, and she had all this incredible self-confidence, this faux self-confidence of someone who'd never actually had to pass an exam or meet an objective standard. So she lived in this, in my view at least, in this delusionary world of the reality is whatever you wish it to be. And given she's a leftist cultural studies activist, that she's able to, again, an exam that no one ever fails. So anyway, she this breakdancing thing copped a lot of flack. And now I didn't see anything that I would regard as hateful, and I looked at a lot of the comments hateful or something. It was more derision. How could a crap dance like that ever make the Olympic Games? Or how can someone like that think that how is she trying to defend that my 10-year-old kid could do better? And it was that sort of stuff. I wouldn't regard any of it as hateful. I never saw any. But how does the globalist media describe? Now they've got an article. Here's an article here where, and there's a number of articles that are pretty similar. So they're obviously centrally scripted by the globalist machine. But to say, well, this is a great opportunity for us to say, shame on you for putting, for jeering and criticizing us. Even the mildest criticism, even doubting the quality of her dancing is a terrible thing. You should be ashamed of yourselves. So how is it described? The response to her dancing? Well, it's and I'm getting the words. It's vile, it's toxic, it's menacing, it's bigoted, it's immoral, it's deranged, it's cyberbullying, it causes acute harm, it's a crisis committed by neo-Nazis. So this is just for criticizing a crap breakdance. Seriously, just for criticizing a crap breakdance, this is the response. vile, toxic, menacing, bigoted, immoral, deranged, cyberbullying, acute harm, neo-Nazis. I mean, you're kidding me, right? But this is the sort of language that they use in order to shame and condemn people that, excuse me, not on board with the. I'm going to take a sip of water here. That are not on board with the globalist messaging machine, or not controlled by it. And so this again is a way of restricting the bounds of acceptable conversation. Just because someone does a crap breakdance and who's a female and a leftist academic as well, then the globalist machine will protect them because that person is causing social division in the West. You know, their mere existence, what they do, sort of things they teach, the attitudes they have, they are a product of the modern globalist social divisive social division machine. So they have to be protected by the globalist machine, and of course they are. But the same goes in the Olympic Games for that man who had male genitalia, who claimed to be a boxer. Now, he was trans and brown. So again, the globalist machine, because this is a perfect specimen that can be used for creating social division, and more importantly, putting white people in their place. You know, so if you say anything about well, hold on, the guys, you know, this person's got male genitalia. How can they be in a female boxing tournament? And you know, they win the tournament, as I understand it. They won the tournament, or in that weight division, whatever it was. So, and if the International Boxing Federation said that they didn't satisfy or meet the criteria for being female, then why are they allowed to compete as a female in the Olympic Games if they've got male genitalia? And so on. All reasonable questions, I would have thought. But no. If you even question it, let alone condemn it, then again, you're vile, toxic, menacing, bigoted, immoral, deranged, cyberbullying. Death threats were made. Death threats. Now, can we see some evidence of those death threats? Hey, don't you ask, you damn bigot, fascist Nazi. So the whole thing is manufactured. There's no hatred going on. There's nothing vile or toxic or anything of that sort. But they're using this as a launch pad to say, well, this just proves how much. You know, we have to control the internet, we have to control the online, we have to control misinformation, we have to control this. But the biggest misinformation peddlers, the biggest liars, the biggest you know, people who are putting toxic information out there are the globalists and their globalist machine. So this is all just about controlling the narrative. Again, in the totalitarian states, if you step outside the bounds of the controlled narrative, they'll imprison you or kill you, and only one narrative is allowed. So, sure sign of totalitarian government, or certainly totalitarian intent, is this idea that no one is allowed to speak or have any opinion or voice it outside of the. Now they use terms like vile, toxic, and you know, fascist, Nazi, and all this sort of thing. But these are the same sort of devices that were used by, again, the Soviet Union. You're an enemy of the people. You're a counter-revolutionary. You're a subversive. You're this. So they bring out all these. Fascists too, by the way. They use. So they bring out all these names to condemn the people who you know, step outside these bounds, and that's all that we're seeing here. So we need to dismiss it. And it makes social media is being the only place where information outside of the controlled narrative can be seen or heard, and this is why they want to control it and shut it down. And if we look at say you know, the 2020 election cycle and so on, how you know, a sitting elected president was taken off social media or certain social media platforms on the basis that some brown leftist globalist controlled activists decided they didn't want him on. I just don't want him on there. So whatever he says, we'll just declare it as toxic and say that's in breach of our terms and so on. Whereas they don't hold that same standard to others. So when you get the people running around screaming, you're a Nazi, you're a fascist, you're toxic, you're this and that, why aren't they held to the same standard as other people? So if you criticize someone's breakdancing, you're hate-filled, toxic, fascist Nazi. But if you accuse everybody who disagrees with you or questions what you're doing as a if you accuse them all of being a fascist and a Nazi, oh no, that's okay because we're the good people. It's okay when we do it. And that's really what we're looking at now, which is the same thing in the Soviet Union. Now, the Soviet government, through their news agents like TASS or Pravda or something like that. I think the Pravda means truth in Russian. So the irony of their main propaganda outlet calling themselves Truth, which is what we saw during the COVID. I mean, how many governments were running around and said, "We are your one source of truth." I mean, for goodness sakes. So this was the Soviet. This was the Soviet thing of if we can just control what people see and hear, then we can control their minds. But again, and I've pointed this out a number of times, when the Soviet country collapsed, and bear in mind that nearly all the citizens in the Soviet Union at that time had only ever known communism. They've known nothing but communism. They have seen and not aware of any other alternative government or way of living. They've only known communism. But 2/3 of them knew that everything they were being told was lies. And there were various phrases that the Soviet citizens had to, they pretend to tell us the truth and we pretend to believe it. We pretend to work and they pretend to pay us. We pretend to make the production numbers and they pretend to give us medals, things like that. They had all these sayings throughout which shows that the degree of cynicism and the fact that very few people believed what they were being told, even though they had no other, were exposed to no other way of life. And the first people who were from Russia that were coming over to say Australia in the late 80s as the immigration rules were being relaxed, particularly for Jewish people, but others as well. They were shocked when I remember talking to people when they came to Australia. They were shocked that they went first time they went into a grocery store, all the shelves were full, and they just couldn't believe it. They thought it must be the only grocery store in Australia that had full shelves, or maybe they just happened to luckily come in just minutes after all the shelves have been filled up, and this sort of thing. They couldn't believe that you can go into shops with full shelves. You don't have to queue for anything. You can just walk in and buy a loaf of bread and walk out. They were staggered by this because they'd never known it. They'd never experienced that sort of thing. And so, but they were told that the West was in, you may be queuing for a couple of hours for a loaf of bread, but in the West, they have to queue for 100 years for a loaf of bread because the Nazis are around. So this was the sort of So we're seeing that same tactical architectural approach to information today from the globalists that when we say it, it's true, but whatever they say is toxic, vile, and bigoted, and so on and so forth. But as the globalists control the propaganda machine, or very large parts of it, other than the online stuff, that's why they're going after the online commentators, because that's where the truth is to be found. And if anything, they have to bury and emasculate the truth. That's their priority. You've been attached to us today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.